Welcome to Press TV's news analysis. Now, Newtown, Aurora, Tucson, Virginia Tech and Columbine are some of the wounds that are still fresh in the minds of the American public. In the words of President Barack Obama, the American public has been through this too many times. But even as the first of the funerals of the children massacred in Newtown take place, it's been another deadly day for the U.S. Meanwhile, FBI statistics reveal that 2 million Americans tried to buy guns this November alone. And the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control reports more than 3 deaths occur each hour in the U.S. from guns. Now, the debate over gun control and the influence of the NRA are back in the political debate. Stay with us as we try and answer some of the questions when it comes to gun control and what many call the American culture of violence.
Shock and sympathy were the initial reactions to a shooting rampage that left 26 people, including 20 children, dead at a U.S. elementary school on Friday.
They didn't have the right to die. And they're only like 6 years old.
Officials say the gunman, armed with hundreds of rounds of ammunition, used a semi-automatic rifle as his main weapon. He was also carrying 2 handguns.
There's no reason for anyone to have an assault rifle or have access to one.
Since Friday's massacre, there have been several instances of gun-related violence across the U.S., including in California, Alabama, Washington, and Indiana. The latest incident happened in Kansas with 2 police officers gunned down.
We can't tolerate this anymore. These tragedies must end. And to end them, we must change.
Shooting sprees are nothing new in America. More than 298,000 people are reported to have died from gunshots across the U.S. from 2000 through 2009. That's about 30,000 people every year. Meanwhile, gun ownership in America continues to climb. The FBI says more than 16.8 million background checks for gun purchases were documented in 2012. That's the highest number to have been recorded so far. There are about 300 million privately owned firearms in the U.S. at the moment, including nearly 100 million handguns. Given the powerful gun lobby in the U.S., the situation doesn't seem likely to change anytime soon. In fact, many are now proposing that schools be equipped with guns to defend children against attackers. But is this the solution to America's problem?
If we are a militarized, increasingly a militarized society, we're going to train people to kill, give them the drugs that make them kill, and we're surprised that they kill. And we do this to children, and we give them all the violent games. So, but no one wants to admit there's something very wrong with this country.
Step I take, let this be my song.
Well, I'd like to introduce our panel of guests. We're being joined by activist and radio host Don Debar from New York, the CEO of Raynard Jackson and Associates Incorporation, Raynard Jackson from Washington, and financial editor from Veterans Today, Mike Harris from Phoenix. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, gentlemen. Now, I would like to pose my first question to Mr. Debar in New York. Now, in the wake of this mass killing in Newtown, there have been several other gun-related instances of violence in Big Sur County, Texas. 2 people were wounded. In central Topeka, Kansas, 2 police officers died. In Fashion Island, Newport Beach, a gunman fired over 50 rounds in a busy shopping mall. And in Alabama, a man opened fire at a hospital, wounding an officer as well as 2 employees before he was fatally shot by police. And let's not forget, again, in Alabama, police killed 2 suspects after separate shooting incidents. 3 others are also found dead. What is the underlying reason for this gun culture in the U.S., in your opinion?
There's a culture of violence that lies beneath the gun culture. Just the same day as the Newtown massacre in China, there was a stabbing of 22 or 23 students by someone who was obviously aggrieved, and you can't get guns there. And so the underlying problem of violence is even greater than, just in general, but greater than the problem with guns. Of course, guns are much more efficient killing machines, and that's a problem too. In the United States, the attitude that we have to look at is both the historical one. The country was founded on genocide and slavery. We've been at war since the formal founding of the American Republic in 1789, 1790. In a constant state of war, more or less, against most of the rest of the planet, and often with ourselves. And the statement, for example, by Madeleine Albright, I think, in the 1990s is indicative of the attitude. When she was asked on 60 Minutes if the loss of 750,000 lives of Iraqi children by the sanctions and bombing that the United States under Clinton was conducting against Iraq was worth it, quote unquote, and she said yes, in her opinion it was worth it. So the official policy of the country itself is murderous and doesn't value human life. That children would notice this, and even children in their 20s, and people become acculturated with this attitude that the most successful people in the country are successful by murder, and then they're acculturated with games and things, little soldiers, gun toys, video games that kill, and the whole culture of fear also that makes people think the only way they can be safe with a gun. This is a toxic mixture.
Right. Now, before I delve further into this this culture of violence, I'd like to focus solely on the issue of small arms and guns. Mr. Jackson, I would like to put this question to you. The statistics cannot be ignored. More than 298,000 people have reportedly died from gunshots across the U.S. from the year 2000 through 2009. That's about 30,000 people every year. There are about 300 million privately owned firearms in the U.S. at the moment, including nearly 100 million handguns. The number of firearms rises over 4 million annually. These statistics cannot be ignored now, can they?
Well, I mean, you can quote all the statistics, but what does those statistics mean? Yeah, Americans are deeply rooted in the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, but I grew up around guns, and guns were never an issue as far as violence in my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. And so, yeah, you can make an argument about doing something about assault weapons and automatic clips, things like that. But I think the last thing we need to do is to try to legislate in a cloud of emotion. This tragic shooting Friday is still fresh on everyone's mind, and I think people are proposing all kind of wild and crazy remedies. It's a complicated issue. You got the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms on the one hand. You have the breakdown of the family structure in the U.S. on the other hand, and then you have this culture of Hollywood producing all these violent movies, and I'm amazed that you have all these Hollywood A-list celebrities coming out now talking about violence in the very movies that they are starring in, making all this money. So, but I think what I've heard over the past weekend is a lot of simplistic fear-mongering, and I think we need to detach ourselves from the immediacy of the crisis, take a step back, and let's thoughtfully think through some possible solutions. But this idea that you're going to arm teachers and principals inside these schools, that's ludicrous. That is crazy. And so we have to approach this from a holistic point of view, and that will include also mental health issues. But based on everything we know right now, there is nothing that would have prevented this from happening by knowing more about the person who killed all these kids. And you cannot force an adult, and he's 20 years old, legally he's an adult. His mother cannot force him to get treatment if she thinks he has mental issues. That has to be adjudicated by a court of law. So the issues are complicated, and so we can't give these simplistic solutions to what happened Friday.
Indeed, it is a very complicated issue, and as you rightly mentioned, a holistic point of view needs to be brought about for a solution. But Mr. Harris, jump in here if you may. The debate right now is surrounding basically the right to bear arms. How would you respond to those who believe that this is their right under the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution? Because many do argue that the Second Amendment merely limits how the government can, the limits of the government, that is, in preventing the acquiring of guns, and it does not really constitute an absolute right of bearing arms.
I disagree with that. The Second Amendment absolutely guarantees the right of every citizen of sound mind to have a firearm. It does. There is no ifs, there are no buts, there's no questions about it. And I want you to look at this in a greater context of things. We have had a Zionist-controlled Hollywood, a Zionist-controlled news media that is the conduit to all of this violence, this imagery into every home in America. And so you wonder why there's a culture of violence? It is because it comes from the Jews in Hollywood. That's where the conduit of violence comes from. That's the source of it. But look behind that even deeper. I want to remind you of the Norway shooting of Mr. Breivik, which followed a week after Norway had agreed to support Palestine. Now you look at Israel just lost their bid to thwart Palestine from being recognized by the United Nations. And now here we go. Here's a revenge killing in the U.S. sponsored by Israel that was that killed all these innocent children. And that is something that Israelis do very, very well. They target the innocent, they target children, they target women, and they avoid the issue because they're angry, they didn't get their way. And now Palestine has standing in the UN, and Israel is going to be subject to the International Criminal Courts, and their leadership is going to be taken to task. So let's connect the dots here about what's going on globally, geopolitically, with Israel involved. Now, they're also calling for a congressional hearing. Now, one thing you can count on with a congressional hearing is there's going to be a cover-up, because all of our congressmen are bought and paid for by the Israel lobby in the U.S. So any truth of this that's going to be is going to be hidden because Israel wants it hidden because they are once again the guilty party. You have to realize Israel has been operating death squads in the United States now since Gabby Giffords and Judge Roll were shot in Tucson. There's been other incidences, the Aurora, Colorado shooting. That was, again, Israeli death squads operating in the U.S. I don't know. I am so disgusted with Israel and their behavior on the international stage.
How do you tie in Israel and the Jews to all these killings? I think that's irresponsible to try to label the Jewish community and Israel. I mean, just because the Jews, you could make an argument way back in the 20s and 30s, Goldwyn, Mayer, they own all these Hollywood studios, but in light of what just happened Friday, I think it's grossly irresponsible to turn this into a fight among accusing
Mr. Debar, it seems you want to jump in as well. Quickly have your say as well.
You can have that conversation later on.
Well, you know,
I mean, that's a disgusting what these guys just said.
I watch the filth that Hollywood produces, the filth that comes out of Hollywood.
Guys.
Hollywood is Jewish-owned and Jewish-controlled, and they spew filth and they spew violence out.
Mr. Harris, let Mr. Debar also respond. He wants to jump in.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please. I didn't interrupt you guys. Please be fair. I disagree that Israel was behind this shootout, and I'll leave it at that. And to say that I think that there's often confusion among people in the United States about who was the dog and who was the tail. The United States is a preeminent imperial power in the history of the planet. It controls Israel, and Israel does not control it, although there is some backwash in the Congress and other places. I'd rather go to the issue at hand, however. And the issue at hand is the culture of violence that came with the first settlers, quote unquote, into this country, where they murdered en masse the people that inhabited this continent, and then they stole people from Africa and put them to work here, killing at least half of them en route to build the infrastructure of this country. And the remainder of that infrastructure,
you're really obfuscating the issue here. You're really obfuscating the issue here.
Manufacturing capacity.
The issue is that the source of filth
let me finish, please.
Out of Israel.
Finish. We will
Israel
have you.
controls
we will
it.
have you.
Would you pull this mic out or something?
Yes, Mr. Debar, continue.
Please. Hey, so what I was saying was the remainder of the industrial base in this country essentially is weapons manufacturing, either for military, which consumes better than 50% of our tax dollars, or for the prison industrial complex, which essentially, from the police officers who are now carrying machine guns in the streets to the enforcement of the stripping of constitutional rights against people who are in prison in the main for nonviolent offenses. That tells you the nature of this society. And so you can, if you introduce weapons on the street and make them available to people in a culture like that, then the result that we have now is the inevitable result. One last statement. There is a benefit to getting weapons out of the hands of people. I had a friend, for example, who in the 1970s killed herself and her boyfriend in a fight. The reason that that happened was A, she was angry, and B, her boyfriend was a police officer who had a weapon in the room. If that weapon wasn't there, perhaps she would have tried to stab him or something, but most likely she would not have shot and killed him and would not have shot and killed herself.
Indeed, there are a lot of what-ifs, but let me touch on this. Mr. Harris, you've been sighing as well, but the role of violent media availability and exposure does go a long way in shaping a society's culture. You cannot deny that. And the role the gun lobbies and the American military-industrial complex has in funding these industries does go a long way.
Well, let's say something. You know, taking guns away from law-abiding Americans is pointless. The culture, as we're talking about here, is Jewish-inspired, comes out of Hollywood, comes out of the Jewish-controlled news media. It comes out, our Congress is bought and paid for by Congress. Look at who the major donors are. 70% of the money comes out of corporations that are Zionist, Jewish-controlled. Let's put credit where credit is due. And this goes squarely on the Jewish lobby. And let's look at our gun control who want to take the guns away. Feinstein, Schumer, Boxer, those are all the ones. Those are not the... Those are all Jewish senators, all Jewish people who want to take guns away from normal, law-abiding, middle-class Americans who have a right under this Constitution to do it. They've been trying to destroy this country and trying to destroy this Constitution for the last 70 years since the Frankfurt School came over here from Germany. And I, for one, it's time to push back. We're not going to sit back and take this Zionist-occupied government that we have in this country anymore. It's time for us to have meaningful change
let's just stick
and
to
bring
the
us back
issue
to a
of
true constitutional
Right, let
republic.
me bring in Mr. Jackson now. Mr. Jackson, let's just stick to the issue of gun control within the U.S. Now, New York Democratic Representative Gerald Nadler has already called for a, quote, war on the National Rifle Association, the NRA, saying that the gun lobby group is the enabler of mass murderers. And the NRA has been quite silent up until now in the wake of the Newtown massacre. What do you make of that?
Well, Mr. Nadler, like the other guests on the show, they're spewing out anti-Semitic, on his hand, language, and Mr. Nadler on his side. The NRA is not the problem. And let's assume, for the sake of the discussion, what this gentleman is saying, the Jews are guilty of dumping all these guns. No one is making people put their fingers on the trigger and pulling it. That has nothing to do with the Jewish community, so that needs to be put off the table. The criticism of the NRA needs to be put to the side. The issue is we have a complicated problem that involves the media, involves Hollywood, involves the NRA, involves the Congress, and it involves the media. And everyone, including folks on this show, are throwing out these simplistic approaches, blaming people, pointing the finger. The problem is it's a complicated societal issue, and until we deal with it in a holistic approach, we're going to continue to have these types of discussions, and we're going to continue to have these types of massacres. There are more than one reason why this shooting took place, and for us to try to come up with a simplistic solution or a Band-Aid is counterproductive. What we have to do is approach this problem from a holistic perspective, and you can get guns out of American society. If you choose to do that, guess what? In China, on that very day, Friday, that this massacre was taking place, someone went into a Chinese school and stabbed 22 kids with a knife. So if it's not a gun, it would be a knife. If it's not a knife, it would be a bat. If it's not a bat, it would be a piece of lumber. So if someone is hell-bent on violence and destruction, they will find a way to inflict destruction on a community of people. And so I think we need to kind of calm down and talk about the issue at hand, which is a complicated issue, and we're not going to solve it on this TV show today.
Indeed, Mr. Debar, Mr. Jackson said something a lot of pro-gun lobbyists have been saying in the past as well, and that is no one is making these people put their hands on the trigger and pull it. How do you respond to that?
Look at the legal condition around, first of all, the Second Amendment, how that has been protected in the courts as opposed to the treatment of the First Amendment and the Fifth Amendment and the 13th Amendment and others. The only one that's been protected is the Second Amendment. That's the first thing. Secondly, look at the condition of tort law. Just about everyone out there for their speech or their actions is culpable for damages, with the exception of gun manufacturers. If you made whoever manufactures a gun liable for wrongful death, regardless of the chain of custody, like they do under CERCLA for environmental violations, like they do with speech under many conditions, you would see the problem get solved all of a sudden. The fact that it hasn't been addressed is a testimony to the power of the gun lobby itself, the NRA being an arm of the gun manufacturers and not its membership.
Okay, and Mr. Harris, very quickly, if you can, my final question. The incident in Newtown and the reactions pouring in need to be put into a wider context of what's happening around the world as we see the U.S. Bombarding Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia with its drone activities. There was a lot of criticism over Obama's tears. Now, this does shed a light on the prevalent belief in American exceptionalism. Wouldn't you agree, where it is okay if they systematically target a population, but if something happens that undermines their security, then the whole world needs to be sympathetic and condemn it?
Well, I'm very much anti-war, and I'm very much opposed to U.S. excursions into Iraq, Afghanistan. I think the drone bombings in Pakistan are unconscionable. So I feel great sympathy with the people that allegedly represent me and my country, who are dictating foreign policy. And again, it goes back to Israeli influence in U.S. foreign policy. And I am very much anti-Israel. I want Israel off the face of the earth. They are the source of all problems in the Middle East. They are the original terrorists. And do not forget that this killing in Newtown was a revenge killing because Israel lost the vote about Palestine being recognized in the UN. That's all it's about. It happens every time. It's Israelis acting out, throwing a fit, and extracting revenge upon the United States. That's exactly what it is. And I'm tired of the kid gloves with Israel. It's time to go bare knuckles with them. Let's go.
Okay. As Mr. Jackson put it, we will not be able to solve this issue in this program today, but I'd like to thank my panel of guests who joined us today and made this discussion extremely lively. Activist and radio host Don Debar from New York, CEO of Raynard Jackson and Associates Incorporation. Raynard Jackson from Washington, and also joining us from Phoenix was financial editor of Veterans Today, Mike Harris. I'd like to thank you all for your insight here on Press TV. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with the world news in full. Don't go away.